The first thing I heard was the safety click off. I was standing on my daughter's front porch, holding a glass of iced tea, and Diane Whitmore was raising a handgun in Megan's own driveway. It was 4:47 on a Saturday afternoon in May. The sun was still high. The Hendersons across the street were grilling. A kid 2 doors down was learning to ride a bike. And the president of the Cedar Ridge Homeowners Association was pointing a small black pistol at my 34-year-old daughter, with a clipboard shaking in her other hand. She had no idea who she had just pointed it at.
You will sign this membership form right now,
or I will have you removed from my neighborhood. I couldn't move. The iced tea was sweating down my fingers and I couldn't feel it. Megan stood in the middle of her own driveway in jeans and a plain navy shirt. 2 of Diane's HOA board members, one of them, Carl, the quiet one, looked like he might be sick. The other had her hand half over her mouth. Megan did not move. She did not flinch. She did not raise her voice. She just looked at Diane Whitmore the way you look at a problem you've already solved on paper but haven't said out loud yet. "Diane," she said, "lower the weapon. Sign it." The gun came up another half-inch. "Sign it or I shoot. This is HOA property, and you are trespassing on community values." I want you to hear that line again, because it is the line I have replayed in my head 1,000 times since, and every single time it gets stupider. This is HOA property. It was not HOA property. It was Lot 47, deeded to my daughter, recorded with the county, sitting 50 feet outside the platted boundary of the Cedar Ridge HOA's actual jurisdiction. Diane had no authority over the dirt under her own shoes at that moment. None. But she had a gun. And she had decided that Megan, the polite new neighbor who'd moved in 3 weeks earlier and quietly declined to join, was going to be made an example of. "Little squatter," Diane spat. Loud. Loud enough that across the street, Mrs. Henderson stopped flipping a burger and stared. Loud enough that the woman 2 houses down filming on her phone got every word. "You think you can just move in on my street and ignore the rules? You think you're special?" Megan said nothing. "Sign it." I saw my daughter's right hand drift. Slow, toward her hip. Not fast, not threatening, just a quiet adjustment, the kind of movement she'd done 1,000 times when she put on a belt in the morning. Her left hand stayed open, palm out, perfectly visible. I noticed something else, too. Something I'd missed in the first shock of the moment. Behind Diane, lying in the front grass where it had been ripped down 2 nights before, was the banner I'd put up on the day Megan moved in. Bright, white vinyl, blue letters. 3 words, plus a name. Half of it was buried in the dirt now. Diane had stepped over it on her way up the driveway and never even looked down. If she had looked down, this whole story ends differently. If she had read what was written on that vinyl, really read it, she'd have put the gun back in her kitchen drawer and driven home, and we'd have never heard from her again. But Diane Whitmore had spent 9 years as the president of Cedar Ridge HOA, and in 9 years, she had never once been wrong about anything in her own head. Not the bylaws, not the boundary, not the neighbors she'd squeezed for thousands of dollars, not the women she'd called little and sweetheart until they signed whatever she put in front of them. She wasn't going to start being wrong now. I want to tell you my name. I want to tell you who I am, and who my daughter is, and what she does for a living, that Diane Whitmore did not know on that Saturday afternoon at 4:47. But if I told you now, you'd skip ahead. So I'll tell you the part Diane could see, which was almost nothing. She could see a quiet woman in a navy shirt. She could see 2 scared board members who had stopped backing her up. She could see a clipboard with a form on it that said, Lot 47 mandatory enrollment in block letters across the top. What she could not see was the small, dark rectangle clipped under the lapel of Megan's shirt, with a tiny red light, that had been recording every word she said since the moment her Lexus pulled into the driveway. What she could not see was my phone, in my left hand, also recording, from the porch. What she could not see was the badge. "Diane," Megan said again, and her voice was the same voice she'd used to ask Diane to cite the bylaws 3 weeks earlier. Calm, level, almost gentle. "I'm going to ask you one more time. Lower the weapon, step off my property, and put the clipboard down." "Or what, sweetheart?" That word sweetheart was the word Diane Whitmore used on every woman she had ever robbed in this neighborhood. Mrs. Rosario, 72, widow, who had handed Diane $3,200 3 years ago because Diane told her she'd lose the house. Sweetheart, the young couple on Lot 52 who had paid 2 years of fake dues. Sweetheart, the single mother on Lot 49 who had been threatened with a lien that did not legally exist. Sweetheart. Megan didn't answer the or what. She didn't have to. She had been waiting 3 weeks for Diane Whitmore to do exactly this, to do the one thing she could not paper over, could not lawyer out of, could not talk down at a board meeting. I stood on the porch with a sweating glass of iced tea in one hand and a phone in the other, and I watched my daughter prepare to end 9 years of Diane Whitmore's reign in the next 90 seconds. I had never been more terrified in my life. And Diane Whitmore had no idea she had just pulled a weapon on the wrong woman, in the wrong driveway, on the wrong street, in the wrong county. She was about to learn what real authority actually meant. And whatever was clipped under my daughter's lapel was already recording every word. 3 weeks earlier, none of us knew Diane Whitmore had a handgun in the kitchen drawer next to the kettle. 3 weeks earlier, my daughter had just closed on her first house. Lot 47, Cedar Lane. The last property on the street before the road bent into the county woods. A small bungalow with a porch she liked, a yard she could mow in 20 minutes, and a kitchen window that caught the morning sun. Megan had been transferred to Oak Ridge County in February, sworn into her new job in March, and lived in a rented apartment near the courthouse until she found the bungalow. She closed on a Tuesday and moved in on a Saturday. I drove down with a U-Haul trailer and a banner I'd had made at the print shop on Main Street, because that's the kind of thing a father does when his only daughter buys her first house. Vinyl, bright white, blue letters, Welcome Home Sheriff Carter, and underneath, Lot 47, May 2024. I hung it across the porch railing while she was inside unpacking the kitchen. She came out, saw it, and laughed. "Dad, take it down." Why? Because I want a quiet street. I want neighbors who know me as Megan, not as the sheriff. I want to drink coffee on this porch on Sunday mornings without anyone needing anything from me. She paused. "Give it a month. Then put it up." I took it down and rolled it and put it in the hall closet. That was the kind of woman my daughter was. 34 years old. The youngest sheriff Oak Ridge County had ever elected. She'd won by 11 points against a man who'd held the job for 16 years. She did not want a banner. She wanted a porch. She would have gotten the porch too, if Diane Whitmore had been a different person. Diane was 58, retired insurance adjuster, widowed 3 years, lived alone at the top of Cedar Lane in a 4-bedroom colonial that was technically inside the HOA's actual jurisdiction, which is part of why this whole story happened. She had been HOA president for 9 years longer than anyone else had ever held the seat. There was a reason. By year 3, she had a binder. By year 6, the binder had color-coded tabs. By year 9, she had a kitchen drawer with a handgun in it, which I did not know about yet, and which she was going to use on my daughter. Let me explain the boundary, because the boundary is the whole game. The Cedar Ridge HOA was created in 1998 to govern the original 96 lots inside the gated section at the top of the hill. Real charter, real bylaws, real authority over those 96 homes. In 2007, the developer built a second phase down the hill, 16 additional houses, including the one my daughter would eventually buy. These 16 were never platted into the HOA. They sat on county-recorded land, outside the gate, with no shared amenities and no obligation to pay anyone anything. I checked the plat records myself the day Megan closed. I am a retired construction foreman. I know how to read a plat. Diane Whitmore had spent 17 years pretending those 16 homes were part of her kingdom. When a new family moved in, she knocked on the door within 48 hours with a welcome packet that included a $400 annual dues bill and a sentence buried on page 2, claiming membership is mandatory for all residents within 1/2 mile of the gate. That sentence had no legal force, but most people who just moved into a house didn't want to start a fight on day 3. Most people signed. Most people paid. 17 years times 16 homes times $400, plus the violations and non-compliance fees she layered on top. The math, as I would later work out, came to somewhere north of $112,000. Megan got her welcome packet on day 2. I was hanging curtains in the guest room when she walked in from the porch with a manila envelope and the small, flat expression I recognized from when she was 8 years old and her brother had broken her bicycle. "Dad, read this." I read it twice. I sat down at her kitchen table with a pencil and circled 3 things. The $400 dues line, the sentence about mandatory membership within 1/2 mile of the gate, and the signature box that said returned within 14 days or fines, accrue at $50 per day. I looked up. "Want me to handle it?" "No." She poured herself coffee. "I'll handle it quietly. The law is already on my side. I'm going to flag that sentence, because 3 weeks later it became the most useful sentence anyone in our family had ever spoken. The law is already on my side. She said it the way other people say the weather is nice today. That night, she wrote a 1-paragraph response. I have the copy. It read, Dear Mrs. Whitmore, thank you for the welcome packet. After reviewing the county plat records and the Cedar Ridge HOA charter, as filed with the Oak Ridge County Clerk in 1998, I can confirm that Lot 47 sits outside the platted boundary of the Cedar Ridge HOA and is therefore not subject to membership, dues, or fines. I appreciate the neighborly introduction and look forward to being a good neighbor. Megan Carter, Lot 47. No threats, no legalese, no mention of her job, just the boundary, the date of the charter, and her signature. She walked it up the hill at dusk and slid it under Diane Whitmore's front door. I was on the porch with a beer when she got back. She sat down and didn't say anything for a minute. How do you think she'll take it? I asked. Megan looked up the hill at the Colonial, with the lights on in the kitchen window. Badly, Dad. As a declaration of war. What are you going to do? Nothing. I'm going to let her come to me. She'll do most of the work for us. I drove home the next morning. 2 hours after I crossed the county line, my phone rang. Megan. Laughing, but not happily. Dad. She's already called twice. She left a voicemail telling me, and I'm quoting, You will sign or you will regret. I pulled the truck over. Save the voicemail. Already saved, Dad. That was the moment, looking back, when I understood my daughter had been waiting for this. Not for Diane specifically, but for someone, somewhere in this new county, to come at her with the wrong weapon, on the wrong ground, on tape. 3 weeks earlier, none of us knew Diane Whitmore had a handgun in the kitchen drawer next to the kettle. 3 weeks earlier, she had only just learned that Megan Carter would not be paying. The paper avalanche started on a Monday. By Wednesday morning, Megan had a folder on her kitchen table thicker than the closing packet on her house. 3 voicemails from Diane, each angrier than the last. A second welcome packet hand-delivered to her porch with a yellow sticky note that said final notice in marker. A formal invoice for $400 in dues, $250 in non-compliance fees, and $50 per day in violation accrual backdated to the day Megan had closed, which meant the meter had supposedly been running before she'd even moved her furniture in. The violation, per the invoice, was a small American flag on a 6-foot pole Megan had mounted to her porch on move-in day. HOA bylaws, the ones that didn't apply to her capped flagpoles at 4 feet for aesthetic uniformity. Diane had photographed the pole. The photograph was attached. Megan looked at the photograph for a long moment and slid it into the folder. She's building a paper trail, I said. She's building my paper trail, Megan said. She just doesn't know it yet. I had driven back down on Tuesday night when Megan called me and said, quietly, Dad, I think you should see this in person. On Wednesday at 11, 14 inches the morning, Megan would later cite the exact time from the doorbell camera a black Lexus pulled into the driveway. Diane Whitmore got out from the driver's side. 2 HOA board members got out of the passenger side in the back. Carl Hennessy, mid-60s, retired pharmacist, the quiet one, and Brenda Powell, late 40s, who ran the Architectural Review Committee, and who, I would later learn, had been the one to photograph the flagpole. Diane was holding a clipboard. I want you to remember the clipboard. Megan was on the porch with a watering can, tending a planter of basil. She did not put the watering can down. She just looked up and waited. Megan Carter. Diane said it like a charge being read at an arraignment. We need a word. Mrs. Whitmore. Megan set the watering can on the railing. Step off my property, please. Whatever you have to say, you can say from the sidewalk. Diane did not step off. Diane walked 3 steps closer. Carl and Brenda stayed near the Lexus, looking like they wished they were anywhere else. You will sign this form. Diane held the clipboard up. The top of the page read, in block letters, LOT, 47 mandatory enrollment. Every other home on this stretch has signed it. You are embarrassing yourself and embarrassing this neighborhood. Megan didn't look at the clipboard. She looked at Carl and Brenda. Carl, Brenda, can either of you cite for me the section of the Cedar Ridge HOA bylaws that places Lot 47 inside the platted boundary of this association? Carl looked at his shoes. Brenda's mouth opened and closed. Section 3.1, Brenda finally said, in the voice of someone reading from a script she hadn't been allowed to fact-check. All properties within proximity of community amenities. Proximity isn't a legal boundary, Megan said. What's the platted line? We don't need to cite anything. Diane's voice rose half an octave. This is OUR community. We decide what's part of it. I watched my daughter's jaw move once. Not anger. Recording. She was filing the sentence away. Carlos Mendez from Lot 44 walked past on the sidewalk with his small white dog. He slowed when he heard voices. He stopped when he saw the clipboard. Diane turned toward him and raised her voice on purpose. Carlos, you're a witness. We have a new neighbor who thinks she's above the rule. Carlos looked at Megan. Megan gave him a small nod that meant it's fine, keep walking. He kept walking, but slowly, and I saw him glance back twice before he reached the corner. Diane turned back and pushed the clipboard forward, into the space above Megan's basil. Sign it. No. Sign it, or I will make sure every person on this street knows what kind of person you are. I will make sure the city inspector finds something wrong with this house. I will make sure your insurance gets reviewed. I will make sure you cannot stay on Cedar Lane. I was in the front doorway by then, arms crossed, framed in the screen. Diane Whitmore had not so much as glanced at me. I was a 65-year-old man in a flannel shirt. I was furniture. Megan's face did not change. Mrs. Whitmore, I am asking you one more time. Step off my property. Or what? There it was, the first time she said it. Megan looked at Diane for a long moment, then looked deliberately at the doorbell camera above the porch light. Diane did not follow her gaze. Carl did. Carl's eyes went to the camera and dropped immediately back to his shoes, and I watched him register something he was not yet ready to say out loud. This conversation is over, Megan said. Carl, Brenda, I'd encourage you both to think hard about who is signing what, on whose behalf right now. You are personally named on every invoice this association has sent me. Have a good afternoon. Diane stared. For 3 seconds, she was looking at a problem she did not understand, and her face went through a sequence I have not been able to forget. Confusion, offense, something colder, a recalibration. Then she spun, marched back to the Lexus, slammed the door hard enough that Brenda flinched on the way in, and reversed out of the driveway fast enough that the tires barked on the pavement. I waited until the Lexus was past the bend. Megan, that last thing you said to Carl and Brenda, you just put them on notice. On camera. Yes, I did. She walked past me, set the watering can in the kitchen sink, opened her laptop, plugged the doorbell SD card in, and dragged the video file into a folder she had created 3 weeks earlier on the day the welcome packet arrived. The folder was named Cedar Ridge Evidence. Inside, sorted by date, were already 11 files. She added the 12th, the 15th of May 2024 driveway confrontation Whitmore plus Hennessy plus Powell and clicked save. Then she sat down at the table. Dad, that was a threat. In front of 2 witnesses. On camera. We just got our first real piece of evidence. What's the play? Nothing. I keep being polite. She keeps escalating. Every time she does, the file gets thicker. Every time she does, Carl and Brenda get more nervous about their names being on something. Eventually, she does something she can't paper over. What if she does something dangerous? She looked at me, with the patience of a woman who had already thought about this question longer than I had. Then I'll be ready, Dad. And so will the camera. That night, on her way out to the porch with a cup of tea, she paused at the front door and looked through the peephole, the way you do when you've started thinking about your front door differently than you did a week ago. Then she opened it, sat down on the porch swing, and drank her tea while looking up the hill at the Colonial with the lights on in the kitchen window. Diane Whitmore was up there pacing. I could see her silhouette cross the curtain twice in the span of a minute. If she had stopped pacing, if she had sat down at her kitchen table and thought hard about who Carl Hennessy might be calling tonight, and what Brenda Powell might be quietly typing into a Google search bar, she would have realized she was already losing. But Diane Whitmore did not stop pacing. She crossed her kitchen, opened the drawer next to the kettle, and looked inside. Then she closed it. Then she opened it again. If you won't join us, sweetheart, we'll make sure you can't stay. That was the sentence she had said on my daughter's porch at 11:21 inches the morning. That was the sentence that, 6 days later, would put her in the back of a patrol car. Carl Hennessy knocked on Megan's door at dusk on Thursday. He was holding a manila folder against his chest, the way a man holds something he has been carrying for a long time and is finally ready to put down. He didn't look at me when I opened the door. He looked past me, at Megan. Miss Carter, I need to talk to you. Before this goes any further. Megan set the dish towel down, Come in, Carl. He sat at the kitchen table without taking off his jacket. He set the folder down between us. He kept one hand on top of it. I've been on the Cedar Ridge board for 11 years. I was treasurer for 6. I am going to lose friends over this, and I'm probably going to lose my place on the board. And I've made peace with both of those things in the last 24 hours. Megan poured him a coffee. She did not say anything. She sat down across from him. Carl opened the folder. Inside were emails. Printed. Dated. Going back 4 years. The top page was an internal HOA board email from Diane to the 3 other members. Dated September 2021. Subject line, Lot 49 getting her to sign. The body was 3 sentences. She's a single mom, and she's scared of liens. Tell her we filed already. We didn't, but tell her we did. She'll sign by Friday. Megan read it twice. How many of these are there? 47 emails. 6 years. 11 homeowners on the lower stretch she's done this to. Some are still paying. Why are you bringing me this, Carl? Because she pulled a clipboard on you yesterday and I watched her do it, and I went home and I couldn't eat dinner. My name is on the bottom of 3 of the threats she sent Mrs. Rosario. I'm 66 years old, Miss Carter. I don't have 11 more years of looking the other way in me. Megan slid the folder halfway back. Carl, if you give me these, I'm going to use them to end Cedar Ridge HOA's ability to do this to anyone ever again. That means depositions. Your name on the record. You sitting across from a lawyer and telling the truth on tape. Are you ready for that? Yes, ma'am. Then leave the folder. Go home. Don't say a word to Diane. Don't say a word to Brenda. Not until I call you. He nodded. He stood up. At the door, he turned back. Miss Carter, are you a lawyer? Megan smiled, very slightly. Carl, I'm a homeowner on Lot 47 who reads her plat records. That's all you need to know right now. Go home. He went home. Megan read the emails one at a time, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. By the time she reached the 11th page, the pad had 8 names on it, each with a year, a dollar amount, and a one-line summary of the lie Diane had used. Mrs. Rosario. Lot 51. 2021. $3,200. Leanne already filed. The young couple on Lot 52. 2022. $1,800. Pool access revoked. The single mother on Lot 49. 2023. $2,400. City inspector will be notified. A retired teacher on Lot 53. 2020. $1,600. Sheriff's office contacted. I stopped at that last one. Megan. She told a homeowner the sheriff's office was contacted. I know. She wrote Lot 53 false statement law enforcement on her legal pad and circled it twice. Word travels on Cedar Lane the way it travels in any small place where the same people see each other at the mailbox every morning. By Friday afternoon, 3 more neighbors from the lower stretch had knocked on Megan's door. Mrs. Rosario came first, 72 years old. She walked down the hill with a small handbag, and when Megan opened the door, she stood on the porch and cried for 30 seconds before she could get a sentence out. I gave her $3,200 3 years ago. She told me I'd lose the house. My husband is buried in the backyard, Miss Carter, under the rose bushes he planted in 1987, and she told me I would lose the house, and I gave her the money. Megan walked her to the kitchen, made her tea, and listened all the way through before she asked, gently, if Mrs. Rosario would repeat what she'd said, with a small audio recorder on the table. Mrs. Rosario said, yes. The young couple from Lot 52 came that evening. They brought 2 years of bank statements, $400 dues, drafts, plus 3 violation fees of $150 each for an inflatable kiddie pool their toddler had used in the front yard. Anna from Lot 49 came Saturday morning. She brought a single envelope. Inside was a final notice of lien letter on what looked like official letterhead. Megan read it, set it down, and said in a voice I had not heard her use before, "This is a forgery. There is no such lien. The county clerk's office never received this." Anna sat down hard. I paid her $2,400 to make that letter go away. I know, Anna. I'm so sorry. Megan recorded her statement too, with permission. With a release form Megan had printed and signed and dated. By Saturday evening, the kitchen table had 4 manila folders on it, each labeled with a lot number, and the yellow legal pad had filled 3 pages. That night, on the porch, Megan put her hand flat on the railing and looked up the hill at Diane Whitmore's colonial. Dad, she's been stealing from a woman whose husband is buried under a rose bush for 3 years. Yeah, I am going to make sure she never collects another dollar from anyone on this street. And I am going to make sure every dollar she has already collected comes back. And I am going to do it in a way that ends her. Lawfully. With paper. You could end her tomorrow morning, Megan. You could walk up that hill in uniform right now. No. If I do that tomorrow morning, she lawyers up. She destroys the binder. She shreds the packets. She deletes whatever Carl doesn't have copies of yet, and she walks away with a fine. I need her to keep going. I need her to do the thing on camera that she cannot talk her way out of. What if she does something dangerous, Megan? She looked at me. Then we will have it on camera, and I will be the one standing in front of her when she does it. She went inside. She picked up her phone. She made one call. I heard her voice from the kitchen, quiet, steady, the voice she used at work. Reyes. It's me. I need a quiet records pull. Cedar Ridge HOA. All filings with the State Oversight Board. Last 7 years. All registered liens against properties on lots 41 through 56. Cross-check against the county recorder. File it under my homeowner account on lot 47, Megan Carter. I don't want anyone in this neighborhood to know it's me. Not yet. Just dig quietly. A pause. Reyes. If I call you next week and I tell you to roll, you roll. No questions. No lights, no sirens until you're on the block. Understood? Another pause. Thank you. She came back out to the porch and sat down next to me. Who's Reyes? My second in command. Megan, how long are you going to wait? She looked up the hill at the kitchen light. As long as she needs me to. Diane Whitmore's response, when she could not get Megan to sign, was to make my daughter's life a series of small, uniformed men ringing her doorbell. On Monday morning at 8:47, a city noise complaint inspector knocked. Diane had filed a report claiming Megan was playing amplified disturbance past 10 p.m. The inspector, a tired man named Ramirez, walked the property, watched Megan's doorbell camera footage that confirmed she had been asleep by 9:30 every night that week, and apologized for taking her morning. He handed her his card. Ma'am, this is the second complaint on this address from the same caller this month. The first was excessive vegetation in the side yard. There was no vegetation. If she files a third, I'd recommend you put it in writing to the city that you believe you're being harassed. I'll back the documentation up on my end. Megan thanked him. She added his card and the timestamp to a folder labeled Frivolous City Complaints. On Tuesday, a building inspector arrived to investigate a structural hazard complaint. The porch, Diane had said, was a fall risk. The inspector, a younger woman named Patel, looked at the porch, bounced her weight on the top step, and said, Ma'am, this porch is in better shape than half the new construction in this county. Marked resolved on scene. Megan thanked her. She added the timestamp. On Wednesday morning at 6:14, Diane Whitmore called 911. She told the dispatcher that Megan was violently threatening her from across the street and that she was in fear for her life. She hung up before she could be asked to clarify. The patrol car that rolled up was driven by Deputy Halverson, from a precinct on the other side of the county. He did not work directly under Megan day to day. He had been at her swearing in. He recognized her on sight. Halverson got out. He walked up to the porch. He saw Megan in the front doorway, holding a coffee cup and her county ID. He stopped at the bottom step. He looked at the ID. He looked at Megan. For half a second I was watching from the side yard with a hose in my hand. His face did something I have not been able to describe accurately, even now. It was not surprise. It was the face of a man who has just walked into a room and realized he is the second most prepared person in it. He did not say her title. He did not say sheriff. He handed back the ID. Ma'am, I have a complaint from a Diane Whitmore. She states you've been threatening her. Can you walk me through your morning? Megan walked him through it. She'd been in her kitchen since 5:30, hadn't left the property. The doorbell camera, the kitchen window cam, and her phone location all confirmed it. Halverson nodded. He took the statement. He walked across the street to Diane's colonial, was inside for less than 4 minutes, and came back out wearing the face of a man who has just been screamed at by someone who does not understand they have already lost. Ma'am, the complaint is closed. Without merit. I've noted in the report that the caller appears to be making repeated frivolous reports against this address. I will personally make sure that record stays clean. He paused. He glanced at me. "Ma'am, if you need anything else from us, anything, you let us know." "Thank you, Deputy." He got in the patrol car and drove off. Diane was standing on her front lawn watching him go, arms crossed, face red. As the patrol car cleared the bend, she turned and looked across the street at Megan's porch. She held the look for a long time. Then she went inside and slammed the door hard enough that the storm door rattled from 3 houses away. That night, Megan and I were eating dinner when her doorbell camera notification went off. She turned the screen toward me. The footage was grainy after 10 p.m. Porch light cycled off. Night vision green and gray. A figure in a dark hooded jacket walked up to the front yard, paused at the corner of the porch, and methodically tore down the banner I'd hung 2 days earlier, the one she'd finally said it was time to put up. "Welcome home, Sheriff Carter." The figure ripped the vinyl off the railing, snapped the wooden post, and dropped both pieces in the grass. Then it walked to the flower bed, opened a black trash bag, and dumped what looked like a week of household garbage across the front of the porch. Then it walked off camera, toward the top of the hill. 2 minutes earlier, on the garage corner cam, a black Lexus had rolled past the bungalow with its headlights off. I felt my hands ball up. "Megan, that is felony vandalism. On tape. That is her car 2 minutes before the shot. I say it, Dad. Why are we not calling someone right now?" She set her fork down. She looked at me with the expression of a woman who had done the math 3 moves ahead of where I was sitting. "Because if I call someone right now, she gets a misdemeanor and a slap on the wrist. If I let this sit in the file for 48 more hours, the State Oversight Board records Reyes is delivering Wednesday add 12 more counts of fraud to her docket, and the picture of who Diane Whitmore really is changes. She is no longer a neighbor who lost her temper. She is a serial offender with an escalation pattern. You're letting her load the gun." "Dad, the gun is already loaded. It has been loaded since 2007. I just want to be the last person standing in front of her when she finally points it." I did not eat the rest of my dinner. The next morning at 7:14, Carl Hennessy called. Megan put it on speaker. "Miss Carter, Diane called an emergency board meeting at the Clubhouse tonight. She told me, quoting, that she's bringing something that ends it next time she sees you. I don't like the sound of it. I had to call." Megan thanked him, told him to go to the meeting, told him not to warn Diane we knew. She dialed Reyes. "Reyes, I need eyes on Cedar Lane every 2 hours starting tonight, unmarked, no uniforms. If she leaves her house with anything in her hand that isn't paperwork, I need to know inside of 3 minutes. Today." She hung up. She looked out the kitchen window. Up the hill, the Colonial was quiet. The curtains in the kitchen were closed. Inside, on the counter next to the kettle, Diane Whitmore opened the drawer. She looked at the handgun for a long time. She closed the drawer. She opened it again. This time, she did not close it. The Cedar Ridge Clubhouse sat at the top of the hill, just inside the gate. The meeting room fit 40 people in folding chairs. Behind the podium, on the back wall, was a framed copy of the original 1998 HOA charter, the one with the platted boundary on it. Diane had hung it herself. In 9 years as president, she had never once taken a closer look at the map. The emergency meeting was scheduled for 7 p.m. Thursday. By 6:45, the parking lot was full. By 6:55, the chairs were full, and people were standing along the back wall. I counted 41 heads. Carl had called every homeowner on the lower stretch personally that afternoon. Mrs. Rosario came in a flowered dress, holding her handbag with both hands. Anna from Lot 49 brought her teenage son. Carlos Mendez sat in the second row with his arms crossed. Megan and I walked in at 6:58. She wore jeans and the same navy shirt she had worn the day of the driveway confrontation. She carried nothing. She sat down in the 5th row, on the aisle. I sat next to her. Diane Whitmore stood at the podium with her color-coded violations binder open. Brenda Powell sat at a side table with a stack of papers. Carl sat in a folding chair at the far edge of the dais, looking at his hands. Diane did not greet the room. "Tonight, I am moving to place a lien on lot 47 inches, the amount of $4,300 for unpaid dues, accrued fines, and violations. I am also formally petitioning the board to begin proceedings to remove the homeowner from the Cedar Ridge community." A small sound went through the room. Not a gasp, something quieter. People shifting in their chairs. Diane looked up. She looked directly at Megan. "Some people think they're above the rules. Some people think their last name means something around here. It doesn't. Not in my community. Megan did not move. She did not lean forward. She did not change her facial expression. She just looked back at Diane with the same level look she had used on the porch and on the driveway and on the phone with Reyes. Diane held the look 2 seconds longer than was comfortable, then turned to the binder. The vote on the lien will be taken at... Excuse me. Mrs. Rosario was standing. She had stood up from a chair in the third row, holding a manila folder in both hands the way she had held her handbag earlier. Her hands were shaking. Her voice was not. Diane, you took $3,200 from me 3 years ago, for a lot that isn't even in your HOA. I have the bank receipts. I have the letter you sent me. I have the lien threat that the county clerk says you never filed. Right here. She lifted the folder a few inches. 41 heads turned. Mrs. Rosario, this is not the time. Anna from Lot 49 stood up. You took $2,400 from me, with a forged lien letter. May 2023. The young husband from Lot 52 stood up. $1,800 from us, over 2 years, for a kiddie pool. The retired teacher from Lot 53 stood. White-haired, slight, reading glasses pushed up on his forehead. You told me in 2020 that you had contacted the sheriff's office about my mailbox. I confirmed with the sheriff's office last week that you had not. I'm leaning toward filing a report. 4 more neighbors stood without saying a word. Lot 46, Lot 48, Lot 50, Lot 55. The room was now half standing. Carl Hennessy stood up from the dais. He walked across the small stage to the podium. He took a folded sheet from the inside pocket of his jacket and set it on top of Diane's binder. That's my resignation, Diane. I told you to stop 2 years ago. You didn't. I'm done. He walked off the dais and sat down in the front row, in the only empty chair, which happened to be next to Megan. Diane stared at the resignation letter on top of her binder. When she looked up, her face had changed. Not red anymore. White, tight at the corners. Something between fury and panic. You did this. She said it directly to Megan, across the room, into a microphone that did not need a microphone. You poisoned them against me. You came here 3 weeks ago and turned my own neighbors against me. Megan finally spoke. From her chair. No microphone. Mrs. Whitmore, I haven't said one word at this meeting. They're speaking for themselves. Maybe ask why. Brenda Powell, at the side table, slowly put her stack of papers down. The quorum collapsed 3 minutes later. Diane could not produce 4 board members willing to vote for the lien. Carl had resigned. Brenda would not raise her hand. The 2 remaining members refused to make eye contact with Diane and asked, in carefully neutral voices, that the matter be tabled pending further review of the underlying jurisdiction. The meeting ended without a vote. Diane Whitmore walked out first, holding her binder against her chest, the way Carl had once held a folder. She did not look at anyone on the way out. I drove Megan home in silence. Cedar Lane was dark except for porch lights. Halfway down the hill, she spoke. Dad, she's not going to let this go. She's the kind that decides the only way out is through. What does she do next? She looked out the window at the Colonial as we passed it. The kitchen light was on. A silhouette was moving behind the curtain. She comes to my house. And whatever she does there will be the last thing she does as a free woman. I did not answer. Up at the top of the hill, inside the Colonial, Diane Whitmore set the binder down on her kitchen counter. She did not turn on the dining room light. She did not sit down. She did not take off her coat. She walked to the kitchen counter. She put her hand on the drawer next to the kettle. The kettle was on the stove. It had been on the stove since before she left for the meeting. She had forgotten to turn off the burner. The water inside had been simmering for nearly 3 hours. Now, with the lid still on, it was finally hitting the temperature that made the kettle scream. Diane opened the drawer. The handgun was where she had left it. She picked it up. The kettle was climbing in pitch. She checked the magazine. She checked the safety. She set the gun down on the counter next to the kettle. The kettle was at full whistle now. The sound filled the kitchen. Diane did not move toward the stove. She did not turn the burner off. She let it scream. 6 days after the Clubhouse meeting, on a Saturday afternoon in May, the black Lexus turned onto Cedar Lane. I was on the porch with the same glass of iced tea I had been holding when this whole story started. Megan was at the bottom of the driveway, returning from the mailbox. She looked up when she heard the engine. She did not move toward the house. She set the envelopes down on the porch step. She slid her left hand into her pocket. With her right thumb, without looking, She pressed a small button on a device clipped under the lapel of her shirt. A tiny red light that no one across the street would be able to see started blinking. She texted one word, by feel, roll. The Lexus stopped at the curb. Diane Whitmore got out from the driver's side. Brenda Powell got out from the passenger seat. A third board member I did not recognize got out from the back, already looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. Diane was holding a clipboard, and in her right hand, half hidden against her thigh, she was holding a small black pistol. She walked up the driveway. She did not stop at the property line. 20 feet from Megan. 15. 10. She raised the clipboard. She raised the gun. You will sign this membership form right now, or I will have you removed from my neighborhood. It was 4:47 on a Saturday afternoon in May. The Hendersons across the street had stopped grilling. The kid on the bike had frozen. The woman who had filmed the first confrontation had her phone up again before Diane finished her sentence. Megan stood in her own driveway, in jeans and a navy shirt, left hand visible and open at her side. Diane, lower the weapon. Sign it. Sign it or I shoot. This is HOA property, and you are trespassing on community values. Brenda whispered, "Oh my God, Diane, please put it down." Diane did not put it down. "Little squatter," she spat. "You think you can just move in on my street and ignore the rules. You think you're special. Sweetheart, sing it." At the far end of Cedar Lane, two unmarked sedans turned onto the block. Slow, no lights, no sirens. Megan looked at Diane Whitmore. "Diane Whitmore, lower the weapon. Step back from my property. Put the clipboard down." "Or what, sweetheart?" There it was. The second time she said it. Megan did not reach for her hip. She reached for the lapel of her shirt with her left hand, and she pulled it open. Clipped to the vest underneath was a 5-pointed gold star. Next to it, a small black rectangle, with a tiny red light, blinking. "Sheriff," I said from the porch, before I could stop myself. Diane did not hear me. She was looking at the star. She was looking at the blinking light. The clipboard was still half raised. The gun was still pointed. But her arm, the one with the gun, had dropped 2 inches in the half second it took her brain to assemble what she was looking at. "Sheriff Megan Carter," Megan said. She did not raise her voice. "Of this county. Drop the weapon. Now." Diane's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Brenda took 2 steps backward and bumped into the third board member, who had already turned half around toward the Lexus. Brenda put both hands over her mouth. I didn't," Diane started. Her voice was different now, higher, thinner. "I didn't know you. Can't you're—" "Drop the weapon, Mrs. Whitmore. Now." The unmarked sedans rolled up Cedar Lane, slow. The lead sedan stopped 20 feet from the Lexus. The second pulled in behind it. 4 deputies got out. Reyes was in the lead. Diane finally turned her head. She saw the deputies. She saw the woman across the street still filming. She saw, on the lawn behind her, the torn banner from 2 weeks earlier, half buried in the grass, with the words, "Welcome home, Sheriff Carter," still visible. She had stepped over that banner on her way up the driveway. Her arm dropped the rest of the way. The gun pointed at the pavement. "Drop it, Mrs. Whitmore." She dropped it. It clattered onto the concrete. "Step away from the weapon. On your knees. Hands on top of your head." She went down. The clipboard fell out of her hand as she did, and the form on top, LOT 47, mandatory enrollment, with no signature on the line, fluttered across the driveway and came to rest against the front tire of the Lexus. Reyes crossed the driveway. He looked at Megan once. Megan nodded. Reyes pulled handcuffs from his belt and put them on Diane Whitmore on Megan's lawn, while Brenda stood frozen 6 feet away, with her hands still over her mouth, and the third board member quietly threw up in the grass next to the Lexus. "Diane Whitmore," Megan said, "you are under arrest for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon against a peace officer, brandishing, felony coercion. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Diane was staring at the gold star clipped to Megan's vest. She was still staring at it as Reyes walked her to the back of the lead sedan, opened the door, put a hand on the top of her head, and guided her into the back seat. She kept staring at it through the window. By the time she had been read her rights for the second time, 40 neighbors were standing on their porches up and down Cedar Lane. The deputies recovered the weapon, bagged it, tagged it. Another deputy removed Diane's color-coded violations binder from the back seat of the Lexus. Carlos Mendez walked slowly down the sidewalk from Lot 44 with his small white dog, stopped at the edge of Megan's lawn, and said to Reyes, "Officer, I was a witness at the first confrontation 3 weeks ago. I'll give a statement whenever you need it." Reyes thanked him. Carl Hennessy arrived on foot from the top of the hill 10 minutes later, breathless, carrying the rest of the email trail. Brenda and the third board member gave on-scene statements to a second pair of deputies. Both flipped without being asked. Megan handed Reyes a small black thumb drive, pre-prepared, indexed, labeled by date. Body cam, doorbell, garage corner, 911 audio, Mrs. Rosario's recording, Anna's recording, Carl's emails, the forged lien letter, the clubhouse meeting audio, everything. Megan walked up to the porch. She sat down next to me on the top step. I was still holding the iced tea. I do not remember when I started crying. "Dad, how long have you known you'd do it this way?" Since the day she handed me that first welcome packet, she told me she'd make me sign or remove me. I just needed her to mean it on camera. The Lexus stayed in Megan's driveway for another 40 minutes, until the tow truck came to take it to county impound. The unsigned membership form lay against the front tire the whole time. When the tow truck finally pulled away, the form was still there, in the driveway, by itself. The body cam was still blinking. The gold star was still on my daughter's vest. And the banner with my daughter's title on it was still lying in the grass behind the spot where Diane Whitmore had pointed a gun at the wrong woman, in the wrong driveway, on the wrong street, in the wrong county. 2 weeks after the arrest, the indictment came down. Diane Whitmore was formally charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon against a peace officer, felony coercion, brandishing, and 17 counts of fraud spanning the years she had been collecting dues from homes that owed her nothing. The aggravated assault count alone carried a sentencing range that started at 6 years. Bail was set at $350,000. She did not post. She remained in custody pending trial. Her husband was no longer alive to bail her out. Her children, who lived 2 states away and had not spoken to her in 18 months for reasons I would later learn from Carl, declined to put up the bond. Diane Whitmore would sit in a county cell for the next 4 months, in the same clothes she had been arrested in, until her court-appointed attorney could arrange a change. The civil suits followed within 10 days. Mrs. Rosario filed first, then Anna, then the couple from Lot 52, then the retired teacher from Lot 53. Then 4 more neighbors from the lower stretch who had not come forward at the clubhouse meeting but came forward once they saw the photograph of Diane in cuffs on the front page of the county weekly. Diane's house, the 4-bedroom colonial at the top of Cedar Lane, was placed under lien pending judgment within 3 weeks. She lost it within 4 months. The proceeds from the sale, after legal fees, were distributed to her victims by court order. The state HOA Oversight Board ruled on the boundary case 6 weeks later. The original 1,998 platted boundary was upheld. Cedar Ridge HOA's 17-year practice of annexing the lower stretch was voided. 16 homeowners on lots 41 through 56 were refunded years of fraudulent dues totaling, by final count, $81,400. Mrs. Rosario received a check for $14,600. She used it to repair the roof her husband had been planning to fix the spring he died. The Cedar Ridge HOA board was dissolved by court order. A new board was elected under new bylaws that required open meetings, public minutes, and a county-recorded boundary map posted at every entrance. Mrs. Rosario, to my surprise and Megan's quiet pleasure, took a seat on it. She told Megan, the day she was sworn in, that she had decided to do it because nobody else on Cedar Lane had ever asked her to do anything before. Megan did not run for the new board. She did not need to. On a Saturday afternoon in July, 2 months after the arrest, the big brass sign at the gate at the top of the hill, Cedar Ridge HOA members only beyond. This point was taken down with a flatbed and a sawzall. A neighbor from Lot 42 filmed it. The video circulated around the county. I was not there for the sign. I was on Megan's porch with a fresh banner laid across my lap, hanging it properly this time, with screws into the railing instead of the zip ties I had used the first day. Welcome home, Sheriff Carter. Lot 47, May 2024. This time, no one on Cedar Lane would dare touch it. Megan pulled into the driveway in her cruiser at 5:15. She had been at a county supervisor's meeting. She took her hat off, hung it on the porch hook the way she had hung it every evening for 2 months now, and sat down next to me on the top step. I poured her a glass of iced tea. She looked at the banner on the railing for a long moment. Then she looked at the driveway at the spot where the Lexus had been, where the clipboard had been, where the gun had clattered on the concrete and the unsigned form had come to rest against the front tire. The driveway was clean now. The basil in the planter had finally recovered. A bird I did not recognize was drinking from the puddle by the downspout. "Dad," Megan said. "Yeah, kid. I moved here because I wanted a quiet street." I looked at her. I looked at the banner, freshly hung. I looked at the empty driveway. I looked up the hill at what had once been the Whitmore Colonial, and was now, as of a week earlier, the home of a young couple with a baby who had bought it at auction. "You got one, kid." She drank her iced tea. The kind of quiet you only get when the loudest person on the block has finally learned that the badge isn't on the wall. It's on the woman who lives next door. 40 miles away, in a clerk's office in the county courthouse, 4 objects sat in a sealed evidence bag on a tagged shelf. A clipboard, an unsigned form with the words Lot 47 mandatory enrollment across the top, a small black handgun, and a torn vinyl banner that read, "Welcome home, Sheriff Carter." 3 weeks earlier, Diane Whitmore had stepped over the banner on her way up the driveway. She had never looked down.